agenda we have solar module market outlook, comparison of product cost of Indian and Chinese modules and measures to reduce the gap, bridging technology and supply chain gap between Indian and Chinese manufacturers, impact of ALMM on capacity addition across market segments, availability of high efficiency modules to Indian users, and outlook on export opportunities. So I would like to call upon Dhruv Tyagi, the moderator of the session today. He's the senior consultant of CRISIL Limited. Next, I would like to call upon our distinguished panelists. Mr. Sujay Ghosh, the Vice President and Country Managing Director of India First Solar. Please, may I have you on here? Mr. Sujay Ghosh. Next, we have Mr. Amit Pathankar, CEO of Waaree Energies Limited. And we have Mr. Prashant Mathur, CEO of Satvik Solar. Next, we have Mr. Anshul Khandelwal. Please, may I have you here on the stage? Of course, he's the strategy lead, New Energy Reliance. And next, we have Ivan Saha, CEO of Vikram Solar Limited. The last, we have Mr. Kunal Saxena. Thank you all for joining. And we can begin with the session now.
Thank you, Informa team, and our panelists. We're very grateful that you're here today. So solar module manufacturing has been one of the thrust sectors of Indian government. The Indian government is providing support in many forms to the sector in form of import barriers, PLI scheme. Some state governments also provide incentives. The capacity has also grown leaps and bounds in the last few years. We have seen manufacturing capacity increase from the low 10 gigawatts in the early 2020s to now touching more than 70 gigawatts. So the sector is growing, but there are some challenges. And I believe we have just the right panel today to address some of those challenges. So I'll just start with the questions. Just to set the context, I would request all the panelists to talk about their current manufacturing capacity, split by technology, and their plans in the next few years. We can start with you, Anshul.
Yeah, hi. Audible, right? Yeah. So Anshul Khandelwal from Reliance Industries, we are setting up an integrated solar value chain, 10 gigawatt from polysilicon to modules, modules and cellular heterojunction technology.
Hi, Amit from Waaree Energies. We have at this point in time 13.4 gigawatts of module manufacturing capacity. Another 1.6 gigawatts is coming up in Houston, Texas. And we are setting up a cell plant which should be operational here very soon, which is going to be 5.4 gigawatts. 1.4 gigawatts out of that is mono-PERC, and 4 gigawatts is going to be TOPCon. And as a part of PLI, we are going to extend it by another 6 gigawatts of wafer cells and modules.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sujoy from First Solar. We have commissioned India's first full integrated, which is semiconductor to module facility with thin film technology, CadTel thin film, with a nameplate capacity of 3.3 gigawatts per annum. This is everything from semiconductor to the module under one roof in Sriperumbudur in Tamil Nadu.
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Prashant Mathur from Satvik Solar. We currently have 3.8 gigawatt module capacity, which is in Ambala, which is north of Delhi. And we are setting up 3 gigawatt of cell and 4 gigawatt module in Odisha. And that's going to come online next year.
Hello. Yeah, this is Ivan Saha from Vikram Solar. Vikram currently has 3.5 gigawatt of module capacity, which is getting expanded this year to about 4.5 gigawatt. And we are setting up another 6 gigawatt of module capacity and 3 gigawatt of cell capacity in southern part of India.
Hello, this is Kunal Saxena. I represent Campaign Energy Transition. So we currently are in the process of installing cell and module facility of 1.3 gigawatt each. We have over next 4 to 5 years, we have plans to build a 5 gigawatt value chain, manufacturing value chain, in right from module to wafers. We are primarily an IPP, also have the manufacturing vertical. So I speak on behalf of manufacturing vertical.
Thank you, Kunal. Your perspective definitely will be quite interesting today. I'll start with Amit. We've seen ALMM is set to be introduced from April 2026 onwards. And you mentioned you're setting up about 5 gigawatts of cell capacity on your own. What do you think could be India's projected cell manufacturing capacity by 26? And would that be enough to sustain domestic demand?
Oh, great question. The policy drift is very clear. Like you said, ALMM for cells is going to come in 26, may come earlier as well. As these policies get clearly specified by the government, we have seen that corresponding manufacturing facilities are actually set up very quickly. So we, about a year and a half, we're nowhere near the kind of module manufacturing facility that we have right now. And in the same vein, we are going to expect, so almost everybody here, of course, Reliance has got a fully integrated plan all the way from polysilicon, but everybody else is actually having a plan to go into cells. Our estimate says that just in the next few, I would say 3 to 4 months time itself, India will be at the level of around 20 gigawatts of cells.
From 8 gigawatt.
From 7 or 8 gigawatts that we have right now. So literally in the next few, because our capacity is going to go online. There are a few other manufacturers whose capacity is going to go online. So that's literally in the next quarter, we'll see 20 gigawatts come up. And I would say at least another 10 to 15 gigawatts by 2026. So by that time, we may have somewhere around 30 to 35 gigawatts of cell capacity. Will it be enough for India? By that time, probably we will need more, is what my sense is.
I understand the capacity, the ALMM introduction on cells is in line with the PLI deadlines. So most manufacturers are expected to set up their cell capacities within the next 2 years. So hopefully India's cell manufacturing capacity should be enough by then.
Sure.
Yeah. My next question is to you, Anshul. What do you think will happen across the rest of the value chain? We've seen recently solar module ancillary manufacturers have been advocating for an ALMM-like structure on ancillary components as well. Do you think players setting upstream capacity in future could advocate for similar policies like ALMM on products like wafers, polysilicon, etc.?
Yeah. So, see, if we take a proxy from China, what has happened in China is they've also gone in similar fashion. Once a policy is introduced on downstream, obviously everyone who's on upstream, how do you take the country upstream? You have to give some policy support initially. I strongly believe that there will be policy support which will be demanded for upstream. But at the same time, we have to understand that what is the landscape in the country. The landscape in country is that there are going to be large number of module players, selected cell players, and then upstream becomes very scale focused. So obviously, some policy support will come further to PLI. We cannot say how that will be implemented, but definitely there will be a demand. And I personally believe India is very well placed today to try to have entire integrated value chain, because polysilicon forms a basic raw material for many other industries. That's point number one. Point number two is, by putting the entire value chain, we become independent, and our dependence on any import reduces, which is very critical for country. And that is the part to get energy independence as well. So I believe that's going to happen, and I look forward to that scenario.
Any opposing views on the panel? Any different views? All right.
Not an opposing view, actually just a supporting view. I think, as Anshul rightly said, polysilicon is actually used not only for solar, but if you have it of the right quality, it's actually also required in semiconductor industry. So overall, it will not be too inconceivable to, especially with the favorable policy environment, that we have a very strong, across the value chain, support that industry gives. So pretty positive about the whole ecosystem.
Our estimates suggest India could be setting up anywhere around 30 to 40 gigawatts of polysilicon capacity. There are 3 to 4 large players that we see have concrete plans. Do you think that would be enough going forward?
So there are two sides to this question which you asked. First is, the floor of it is going to be determined by the policies today foreseeably, that is PLI. So we definitely know that around 40 to 50 gigawatt of PLIs were awarded, and as you rightly said, 30 to 40 looks visible. What is the second step? Once we start doing polysilicon, the only competition we have is with China. And in polysilicon, almost 40% cost is attributed by energy cost. And hence, once we get energy cost under control, I believe it's a circular logic. We will have cost efficiencies along with us also. And then I think the good news is, unlike China, we have skipped a lot of inefficient polysilicon capacities. We will be putting very efficient polysilicon capacities. I am very hopeful we'll not only produce for ourselves, because I think our demand will get capped somewhere at 30, 35 gigawatt, but definitely for Western world, we will be one of the key suppliers of polysilicon.
Kunal, my next question is to you. What are your overall, do you have a view on overall India manufacturing capacity, let's say in 2 to 3 years down the line, versus what India's total domestic demand could be versus what manufacturers could be exporting by then?
Yeah, actually that, first let's look at what the demand can be. What can be the total addressable demand if I talk that way. So if we calculate backwards, right? So we have 2070 target of net zero, right? If you calculate how much is the GDP, what is the growth for next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and reaching all the way up to 2070, that is one element of it. Second, the manufacturing pie of the total GDP is going to grow beyond 30%. That is second part of it. If you calculate the overall thing, the AC side, and assuming that you have only solar, which is the most efficient technology as of now, assuming we have not made significant strides in other technologies like femtosecond laser or something, so solar is the only savior, you need approximately 500 gigawatt of installed capacity on AC side. Yeah. Now convert that, we have 50 years remaining, that amounts to 100 gigawatt per annum. I'm only talking about the total addressable market. That AC-DC ratio, do the AC-DC ratio, that is 140 gigawatt. convert all the the vehicles into electricity in EV, it will go beyond, and then India has export target also. So I think the demand is it is beyond what we can assume right now. 50 gigawatt per year is the target given by Government of India. But I think given the total landscape over next 40-50 years, it is going to be at least 150 gigawatt per annum, right? So demand side, we should never worry about it when it comes to renewable energy. There are challenges now coming to the supply side. So that way, supply side, the estimate in over next 2 to 3 years, if you look at the PLI capacities that are coming up and the other capacities which are coming in, not in PLI, it is estimated that 80 gigawatt of module capacity would be there. 80 to 90 gigawatt of module capacity would be there, and around 40 to 50 gigawatt of cell capacity and corresponding wafer capacities would be there. But this, I think this is only the initial kickstart, given the PLI schemes and other things. Once the ecosystem gets developed, entrepreneurs, get more confidence in it, it will explode. It will go beyond supply and beyond the conceivable supply of 150 gigawatt, which I just estimated.
You're right. Network effect will definitely drive more capacity. Our estimate at CRISIL is that India could set up anywhere around 130 gigawatts of module capacity. Ivan, please.
Can I add something here? Yeah. So I think overall capacity is something that is the numbers that we talk about are fine. There are two things that comes in. One is utilization of that capacity to actually meet the demand. And number two is the efficiency of that capacity, which one is leading to the other. So if you have an inefficient capacity, higher cost capacity, efficiency in terms of absolute conversion efficiency or price or cost or whatever you call it, inefficient capacity will lead to underutilization, will lead to lower CUF. So the effective capacity, historically, if you talk about module, has been less than 30% of the installed capacity. Okay, so even if you have 140 gigawatt of installed capacity across the value chain, probably with that estimate, hardly 50 will be usable and effective. Because one thing you must remember, that there is a final motto or objective of doing all these is to realize efficient or lowest electricity cost. Solar is today the cheapest form of energy, and it has potential to reach even lower than what it is if you have integrated capacity. That is the concept, that is the idea with which backward integration is going on. Now, how much of that will be finally realized, whether you will be able to be efficient or effectively utilize capacity, will hugely depend on the way that you execute this expansion. Okay, so it's a kind of not a straightforward answer to the question that you asked.
And do you have a view on the export market going forward? I have some specific questions that I'll ask later, but if you have a gigawatt number, let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, total India export.
3 years down the line, India exports could be as high as, it all depends on the policy in US, in other markets. I mean, primarily right now, US only is the target market because everywhere else there are Chinese. US is only the market where India has a play. US now installs about 20 gigawatt, 18-20 gigawatt an annum. In 3 years, it might go up to 30-35 gigawatt. Now, depends on how much of the IRA capacities that have been announced are installed, or Southeast Asia, non-ADCVD countries can supply to that. I would say at least 50% of that would be available for Indian players to play with.
Sujoy, do you have a
So,
view on the same?
Just,
Sorry, please
just
go on.
to just to add to Ivan, so export, as he rightly said, that it is a policy-driven market. It depends on what is your target country doing. But assume a scenario without a policy, the Western world needs something like China plus one, right? They don't want to import from China. What is the option left? The countries Malaysia, Vietnam, these countries, and India, where the actual developments are happening. IRA capacities is one thing. How much will that be? Let's assume that will be 50% of the projected capacity. Let's say 40 gigawatt is after 3 years that will be required by the US per annum. 20 gigawatt US can do by themselves. 20 gigawatt still remains. So that 20 gigawatt. Now in the Western world, if you look at the new technology businesses like data centers, like the other, with the advent of AI and when things getting AI heavy, they need green energy because every GPU is consuming a lot of energy and a lot of water, right? So what I mean to say is that with this huge surge of demand of energy, where the lowest cost is offered by solar, green energy in solar, and where the supplies are limited, either you take from China or from these countries, or India. China is part, these countries are Vietnam, Malaysia are there, and then India is there. So I think the potential that I could see on a per annum basis would be at least 30 to 40 gigawatt that can be estimated that way. Yeah. Thank you.
Sujoy, my next question is to you. We saw recently US added 11 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity in just a single quarter, Q1 24. And many manufacturers, we understand, have been banking on exports as a dedicated revenue stream. Do you think exports should just be considered as a potential upside instead of a dedicated revenue stream? And do you have a view on the US export market?
Yeah, so I think I'll pick up from where my good friend Ivan said that US is the only market where they want a non-Chinese alternative, which means that India also wants Chinese, right? So you cannot do a China plus one if India doesn't very clearly specify that we want Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? And therefore, whether it's for export, whether it's for domestic consumption, all of this conversation is meaningless unless we as a country are first clear about what is our own objectives of localizing the supply chain. And we are great at assembling things right now, buying stuff and putting it together, which gets us to whatever 54, 60 gigawatts of modules. It costs 10 times of that to backward integrate it to cell, and Anshul is on the table, and maybe another 10x to get into poly. So my point is, as you get further up the value chain, you start to control your own destiny. But at the same time, it comes at a cost, right? And therefore, stability of policy is extremely important. That's what we discussed. I think some of us were common on the previous session. So if you just going to assemble modules in India and think that you're going to have a robust export, that's a very, very short-term view. Because US doesn't want Chinese cells, by the way. They, in fact, don't want a Chinese wafer also, right? So if we think about that as an opportunity, then we got to seriously backward integrate. But charity begins at home. So first serve your own home market, because you can't have a situation which currently exists where India is manufacturing for the US and importing from China for their own needs. 50% of the value chain. And if you talk about ancillaries, whether you take glass, back sheets, low voltage electrical component, everything is coming from China. We're just doing an assembly game right now. And the simple reason is we lost 5 years because of the policy flip-flop from the government of India. ALLM today, one day there, not there. All kinds of tampering and tweaking on, the BCD, FTA. I mean, it's a complex world from a trade standpoint, right? So we have to be decisive first in our own home market. We do believe that now that clarity has emerged in the policy making framework, which is why you see the optimism in all of us on the table to go backward integrate further, right? The PLI doesn't get you anything dramatic. Okay, by the way,
7-8% of
yes, and there's a cost because to get to that, you have to localize the value chain, which means you have to buy glass from India, back sheets from India, everything from India. And if you do that, there's a cost to the transition, right?
pricing pressure from
So
developers.
therefore, the opportunity which we see is a more strategic collaboration between US and India, where you're going to co-innovate and create next generation technologies which do not have that kind of monopolistic value chain which is there in China. Because you're building for 5 terawatts, which is what my good friend from Ampin said, right? So it's going to take some time. But short term, yes, might be a window, a very small window of opportunity which will disappear very fast because US is also building their own capacity and modules comes up the quickest, right? So you lose the module opportunity. Now there's a significant opportunity for non-Chinese origin cells with non-Chinese origin poly and wafers. Are we going to be agile enough as an industry to address that? I don't know. We've not demonstrated that agility yet because our domestic compulsions of this policy flip-flop has precluded us from really committing large-scale investments. It's a game of scale. And you could, complement the US's demand and do things in India which could serve the US market at a more cost-effective cost point, and maybe have some of part of the value chain being imported from the US or Australia, for example, which is also, by the way, there is a Future Made in Australia initiative which is going on right now. So every large country is looking at their own net zero targets, doing that math and saying, well, I need to domesticate my value chain. So if everybody starts building everything at every place, at the end, then nobody will win. So the way I look at the US export market is very short-term opportunity right now, but long-term, we got to add value, and then there's a larger market which opens up.
So by and large, long-term export opportunity lies in upstream products rather than downstream.
100%. And I would say poly is the most lucrative opportunity because US cost of manufacturing poly would be higher than India.
Right. Prashant, do you have a view on the export market?
So yeah, my view is very similar to what Sujoy said. So there is a short-term opportunity, and most of several manufacturers are selling into US market, but there is beyond US because US is kind of protected right now. So we have an opportunity, but that's short term because US is also building up their own capacities. But beyond US, we have to think about other markets as well. And just assembling modules may help us for the short term, but we have to build the entire value chain. And once we have the entire value chain, then we'll have better control on the cost, and we'll be from a China plus one perspective also, we need to be similar to, may not be equal to Chinese cost, but nobody wants to pay that extra 10% for a China plus one. They are ready to pay a small additional margin maybe, but not a big margin just to promote a China plus one. So I think the entire value chain is we are in the right direction. But yeah, kind of stabilization of policies are important. As Sujoy was saying, ALMM was expected to come in 2019. Eventually, it came only 6 months back. So we are in a very initial phase of ALMM, and I think we're already seeing the benefits. The kind of expansion which everybody is talking here, and you see things are happening on the ground as well. And the same with cell manufacturing also coming with ALCM coming in 26. I think the entire value chain and ecosystem is getting created, and that will give us an opportunity not only in US, but in other parts of the world as well. No, currently we are not able to do Europe, Australia because the price doesn't really make sense for us.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. 96% of India's export has been to the US in the last 2 or 3 years. Um, there was a policy by the EU where they were planning to ban imports from China which used forced labor. Do you see that policy coming into effect anytime soon? Those were just plans, nothing concrete. But do you see anything coming through?
So, sorry.
You can answer, Amit. That's all right.
No, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on why did we get here, and therefore where will we go? I mean, suddenly China is the elephant in the room, right? And it's elephant in the room not just in India, but it's elephant in the room in many other places. Fantastic infrastructure being developed, real low cost, labor is cheap, everything is beautiful. Suddenly my goods are so cheap. You know, it's Navratri happening right now, Diwali is going to come. Everything was from China. The things are changing because balance of trade in every country is changed. Right? Ultimately, everybody realized that we are making one country rich at the cost of many other countries. And so therein lies, you know, almost a public exasperation in some of the countries. And for us, of course, in India, we are neighbors to China. And therefore, that is felt very strongly. And again, US, because they are trying to jostle space of superpowers, and that's where this global dynamics has come up. European Union did not have any issues with China for a very long period of time, till the time that it hit below their belt. And it hit below their belt when Germans started getting hurt with BYD. And that's when they are now starting to seriously look at, oh, this is a big problem. So now they are getting it first in EVs and trying to block EVs. And eventually they will come to other parts. So they are talking about solar value chain and energy as well. So I do believe that, and it's a market which we have to watch. And it'll also open up. It'll also open up for Indians. So in the next 2 to 3 years' time, it will open up. And in my opinion, actually, as a fraternity of manufacturers of India, we should actually be trying proactively to open it up. You know, so that's one. The same goes with Middle East and Africa. The other issue that we need to realize is we keep talking about the fact that, you know, consider China as a juggernaut to a point where you cannot reach their cost point. It's an unassailable cost point. No, that's not the case. I mean, Anshul talked about polysilicon. Basically, 60-70% of the cost is power. For wafers, ingots, cells, anywhere between 25 to 35% of the cost is power, right? Labor-wise, we are actually lower. If we get manufacturing efficiencies in place, our cost points are actually very close by right now.
We've actually seen the cost differential reduce significantly in the last few months.
And in the next few months, you will see that it evens out. Evens out to a point where that is not a concern. If a country has an irrational connection between price and cost, that's something that we cannot chase. Because it defies gravity. For how long can you defy gravity is the question mark, right? And so I think we are very near that zone where you can't defy gravity anymore. Physics is physics, and there are some laws of economics, and you have to ultimately bow down to that. So that point is going to come. And at that point in time, you will find we are there. And then no market is, so then the whole policy framework, infrastructure that is needed, I can be in India only because of the policy framework. I can be US because it has got a favorable policy framework. By the way, I fully am in support with what Sujay said in terms of friend-shoring and having a good relationship with a country like United States from a technology and other wide-ranging things. But what we need to aim at in the next 2 to 3 years' time is, irrespective of the policies, I have opened up doors for markets for other countries. And with the kind of of capacity we are developing, that's the ambition we need to have, which includes everybody. And I mean, if world is your oyster, then it doesn't matter anymore.
Just a point on the EU. So I don't know whether you're following this or not, but there is a EU corporate sustainability due diligence directive, right? That's going to be a law by the end of this year, implementable from, I think, 24 months down the line, it'll kick in, right? They will give 2 years for the industry to adopt. And that has some very, very severe provisions around responsibility in your supply chain, in your value chain, not just around labor, by the way. Labor is obviously there, but it is going all the way to even, you go right down to the mining. And you're looking at biodiversity impacts, you're looking at circularity of your supply chain, and the violations under that directive are penal. And one of them is that if you're detected, so let's say we're selling a product into EU and somebody complains under the law, you have to not only stop, it's not an import ban, you have to take your product off the market, including whatever you installed. So it's pretty draconian. And to me, then there is a cost of doing all of that. It cannot be at 9 cents for sure. The reason why none of us are exporting to Europe is because there's 80 gigawatts of inventory sitting there in containers, where the price keeps defying gravity every day. And they might pay you to clear off their warehouse at some point in time. Yeah. So I think the point about EU is that the market regulations will become extremely tough, and it will cover all sectors. So whether you're exporting steel to batteries to solar panels, there'll be this issue in EU. It's coming.
So Amit needs to leave in a few minutes. So my next question is to you, sir. On the ancillary manufacturing side, we see only 2 or 3 major players across all products, be it glass, be it aluminum frames, EVA sheets. As a large manufacturer with about 13 gigawatt capacity, do you see that as a challenge? And what percentage of your total ancillary needs are you importing versus sourcing from India?
Okay. So when the value chain, we are talking about it covers a whole lot. An honest answer to your question is a huge amount of our value chain depends on China, even today. How much are we trying to source from India? We are trying. Glass, EVA, we're trying. And like you said, there are only a couple of manufacturers. Is there a scope for India to invest in that? The answer to that is 100% yes. So as we develop this, just to give you an example, we have recently got 595 acres of land in Odisha, and some more we are going to get, about another 400 odd acres. That 400 acres is actually reserved for ancillary industry, which we are actually going to, in collaboration, try and get those guys in. So along with just the mainstream polysilicon, wafer, cells and modules, the ancillaries are equally important. They need to be developed, they need to be encouraged. And we need to have a proper, high quality, indigenous supply chain for that as well. It's a big business opportunity for, I'm sure, many manufacturers to really grow up. And I know, people like Reliance are actually also looking at that aspect and bringing it into their value chain also.
So just to put numbers to it. So today a solar module, without any duty impact costs 10 to 12 cents. The non-silicon portion of it is now around 6 cents. So what you are saying is non-silicon has gone beyond 50% of your requirement. And if you see China, what is the difference in China and India today? The Chinese cost advantage is rooted into 2 things. One is innovation, speed of innovation, actually not just innovation. And second is the ecosystem. So your question is absolutely right. That we, especially the large manufacturers, have to grow ancillary ecosystem with them. And, not having only 3 glass manufacturers, or rather, everyone has to think how they can develop more glass manufacturers, more EVA, more ribbons can be made in India. And that's where we started. So our module factory will be coming just 6 months ahead of our glass factory. We will have an encapsulant along with it. And not just that, we are also finding partners in smaller ancillaries and developing that ecosystem. Now, that's how China developed 10 years back. So if we create this ecosystem is not only going to make us, more self-dependent, it's also going to make us more cost competitive. So your earlier question that how do we start exporting to Europe, the answer actually lies in this.
Thank you, Amit sir. It was great having you. Rightly said, Anshul. Prashant, my next question is to you. How difficult do you think it is to find skilled manpower? And are you doing anything to ensure better quality and better trained manpower?
I think manpower is, I would say, currently is the biggest challenge we are facing in this industry. This industry has a lot of challenges, so there's no doubt. But manpower is the biggest challenge which we are facing right now. Because so much of manufacturing is coming, everybody's in expansion, and everybody wants skilled manpower. Firstly, we are working on in-house training of our people and bringing GETs and getting them trained, but also on the operator sides, we are also working with the local ITIs on developing that skill. So skill development council is also we are engaging with them as well, and on developing the manpower, because that's been a real pain area for us for some time, and I think it's only growing. And as we are now getting into cell manufacturing, I think that's going to only increase, because we really do not have any talent available on cell process right now, and very few people and many takers. So we are working on it on a regular basis now.
Ivan, do you have a view? Sujoy, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so let me comment on first the question that you asked initially. Look, I think we need to be reasonable in defining what exactly we are trying to do here in manufacturing setup that we are doing in India today. China has about 1.3 terawatt of cell capacity, module capacity, and about more than that, maybe 1.5 terawatt of wafer capacity. To get to the lowest cost of energy, you don't need to do anything but buy from China, really speaking. If you have to make energy cheaper, China can do it at scale, at a lower cost, at a scale that we can't even, imagine right now. We are doing this for our energy security. We are doing this for ensuring that we have global geopolitics out of our energy mix, agenda, that we can't depend on one country to do this, right? And so is US, and so is Europe also thinking about it. But the ultimate goal is to reach to that cost of electricity, whatever that number is, Now, we have policies now, after a long time, in place, which will get us there. The question is, how quickly, what is the speed at which we can get there, how efficiently we can get there in the next 4 to 5 years. That's the only solution that everybody is looking for. Okay, somebody will integrate up to cell, somebody will integrate up to wafer, somebody will integrate up to polysilicon, and buy either wafer or polysilicon for your cell plant or wafer plant, respectively. But the question is, how efficient will you be? and how quick will you be to get there? Because after a point of time, I am responding to the earlier question which you asked. After a certain point of time, energy, getting power at the lowest cost would be is the real agenda, nothing else. And whether we can set up a supply chain internally within the country, that is the opportunity that we have. Whether we can do it or not is dependent on us. Everything will be required, including manpower. You need to train at least a few lakh people on how to run this kind of manufacturing lines, not one or two. If you see cumulatively, typically, let's say a 1 gigawatt module plant employs at least 300 to 400 people, modern module plants. Cell plants employs about 150 people. You need to, if you cumulatively add all the capacities, you can count the number of zeros, you will find out that you will need a few lakh of trained people working on the floor. Obviously, it can't be created overnight. The question is, everybody will find a solution, try to get there. As I said, speed is on top of everybody's mind. Somebody will import manpower from other geographies and get their people trained. Somebody will do it with internal manpower. But every part of it has to be executed at extremely high speed while you are setting up capacities and running these capacities also. So that is the key here.
My next question is to you. Apologies, Kunal. TopCon seems to be the next big technology that all the developers are demanding. Is the transition from monoperk to TopCon capital intensive? And how difficult is it on the cell side?
So if you talk about transition from monoperk to TopCon, that's you can say theoretically, that's the next logical step from monoperk to TopCon, because you cannot go to HJT, let's say, or IBC from monoperk, right? So theoretically, monoperk to TopCon is possible, though that would be a retrofit from monoperk to TopCon. Vis-a-vis having a TopCon on a bottom-up basis would be better. However, the jury is still out on this front, whether you can do this efficiently or not. But let's assume you can do this efficiently. So TopCon is the next logical step from monoperk, because those machines cannot be upgraded, or some machine can be repurposed here and there, but the whole setup cannot be repurposed for any other technology. Let's say IBC, HJT, tandem, perovskite, nothing. So TopCon is the end game for this particular technology. Now, capital intensity is low. To convert from monoperk to TopCon, the capital you need better clean room from 1 lakh to 10,000. You need there are certain processes. There are some 8 to 10 machineries which will be added. Because TopCon has tunnel oxide, so for that you need extra chemicals. But all those are incremental in nature, so it's not so much capital intensive. You can upgrade it if your question is on capital intensity.
Prashant, do you have a view on the topic?
So TopCon technology is for us, it's the way forward. Obviously, it has its set of challenges, because there's some UV degradation which we have heard lately. But TopCon technology is what we are also investing on, and I think going forward, TopCon and TopCon technology will remain for a few years, and tandem and percosite and these technologies will grow over the end TopCon base. So that's what we are looking at.
Are all your lines currently under TopCon, or are there any monoperk lines also?
Most of it is TOPCon. There's still monoperk demand in the market because of some legacy orders. So we have about 1 gigawatt of monoperk and rest is TOPCon. But going forward, it's all going to be TOPCon because getting like today now, monoperk is expensive than TOPCon. So you will see that over a period of time, monoperk wafers and cells are becoming more and more rare, and only B grade players will remain. So you will see quality challenges. So ultimately, we'll all have to move to TOPCons.
Anshul, we understand Reliance is working on the HJT technology. How is it different from your TOPCon or monoperk? And what do you think is better suited for Indian climate? And if you could also touch upon the price differential between the two technologies.
Yeah, so first of all, we have to look at it from the use case basis. So HJT, how does it differ from TOPCon as a use case is HJT has better low radiation generation, second better thermal coefficient. Also the efficiency curves or efficiency projection and the roadmap for HJT is much better. So today obviously the research was not going towards HJT because TOPCon was a logical step for entire China to invest in. But now that more and more players are coming to HJT, HJT has a better visibility for efficiency. Now, the futuristic purpose is more important. So after TOPCon, one of the question is it's only XBC and nothing else. With HJT, what happens is tandem becomes much better answer. And I think some of the people on the dais have been advocating HJT for very long. I know the perovskite, VOC matches much better in a 2T perovskite with HJT. So it's a much better solution to have a 2T perovskite with HJT. And I think we invested in HJT because we believe that we are at the cusp of technology change. And whenever the technology changes, all the legacy technologies have to face the heat. So we believe HJT gives a better platform to get onto the next technology change. Now the cost, obviously, we can't comment on the price. The price is market determined. Cost-wise, HJT may be slightly costlier because of the silver laydown, various other utility consumptions, etc. And also there is a CTM loss which is higher with HJT today. But all those costs, as the technologies have grown into, or as the research have grown into the silver paste, we are moving towards electroplating and we are moving towards more low silver or no silver paste. I think HJT will be able to meet the cost as well. So there is a very interesting paper by HJT Association in China, where next year projections of HJT costs are lower than that of TOPCon.
Is that on sale price basis or LCOE basis?
No, I am right now talking about only on the cost basis.
All right.
LCOE basis, I think HJT can even today match based on the use case again. So for example, a rooftop use case in US, we are selling, our subsidiary REC has been selling for 15 years in US. Today we command huge premium in US because of the LCOE benefit with HJT. And then the premiums are upwards of 5 cents in any given case in rooftop. Going forward, I am saying there's going to be a capex parity or a capex advantage as well.
Sujoy, how do you think is technology different from the ones we've talked about? And what are some of the benefit it offers over other technology?
So we love this conversation about perovskite and tandems because perovskite is a thin film. So from our perspective, the future of PV lies in thin film because the next disruptive move in the industry is going to be around perovskites. That's a technology which has the ability to disrupt the cost barrier, from a capex, manufacturing capex standpoint. But the manufacturability of thin films is very different because we do deposition. We're not doing metal grade silica, poly, wafer, ingots. We're producing the semiconductor, we are depositing on a thin piece of glass, and then we are creating the device right there in line. So it's a very differentiated process from a manufacturing standpoint. It does lend to high volume manufacturing very quickly. The ecosystem barriers are a lot less. You're asking about localization. Today in a year, we've localized about 65% of our ancillary value chain because there is no, it's all glass. I mean, 85% of our module is glass, and it's also not rolled glass, by the way. It's just clear flowed glass, which is abundantly available in the country, and it's, everybody can make it. So the only reason why thin films have not propagated is because the technology is very heavily patented, right? We as a OEM co-develop our process equipment with the equipment suppliers, right? Which is why as we evolve our technology, we have shared IP with our equipment suppliers to make sure that the high volume manufacturing tools are responding to the technology changes which we make on the device, right? So there are merits and demerits of relying on a commoditized ecosystem where you can buy off-the-shelf tools. Ivan said, go to McDonald's and you can buy a burger. Well, unfortunately, we make aloo parathas and not McDonald's, but we control our own destiny. And the flip side of that is that you don't scale up that much because the ecosystem is completely captive to us. The benefit is that we don't have to rely on somebody else for all the know-how, for all the skilling and training, and for the technology upgrade. All of that, then we control our own destiny. And I think that's, as you look at the evolution of manufacturing in India and elsewhere, more and more companies who are going to look at this business long term and who are going to look at full value integration would have to invest in technology development, right? And not just technology development, invest in the development of the capital goods ecosystem, which is then you really start controlling your own destiny. So from our standpoint, we are differentiated, very differentiated from silicon. As I said, pros and cons, but that's where we are.
Ivan, my last question to you. I understand you have to leave soon. Just on the same note, do you have an in-house R&D team? And have you made any serious breakthroughs? And what is your aspirational R&D expense vis-a-vis annual revenues?
Okay. Yeah, we do have our internal R&D teams. We do have started making modules quite a long time back, maybe 14 years. And by virtue of our R&D, we established our brand, being PVEL top performer at the almost, I think it was in 2016 when nobody knew about PVEL. And that's when we started, and R&D goes back a long way. So we do invest a lot of time and money and energy on R&D, on developing new module R&D, new module types, new module products, new material combinations with focus on value engineering and innovation.
Thank you, Ivan. It was a pleasure having you. Yeah, understand. I just have a few more questions on competition in the market. We see the market is becoming extremely crowded. There are a few manufacturers of scale accounting for about 20-30 gigawatts of capacity. But the remaining capacity is accounted by more than 20 manufacturers. Kunal, my question is to you. how does a manufacturer with 1 or 2 gigawatt type of capacity compete with someone like Wari that has 13 gigawatts of capacity? I understand you have a huge captive demand, 700, 800 megawatts annually. But how does a manufacturer of smaller scale compete with the larger manufacturers?
Yeah, that's a good question. You cannot compete unless you have your strategy right. Yeah. So a 1 gigawatt capacity should strategize herself in a way that it competes. So theoretically speaking, module has modularity, right? So module equipments, they have modularity. So the minimum economic scale, if you look at, the minimum economic scale closes for one line at 600. For two line, you can say the optimum scale can be around 1 to 1.5 gigawatt, and then you can multiply it in scales. But that's not it, because then you have to develop the market also. This is only from operational side. Yeah. For that, you have to optimize cost down to its last level. So if you are talking about Ampen, then we have a joint venture with Jupiter, who has been in the market for past 15, 16 years now and doing the same thing, which is cell manufacturing. If you take cell plus module as a value chain, then cell has the most heavy lifting to do as compared to that of module. So taming cell manufacturing efficiently with the processes there, with the skilled manpower there, that is one thing. And first you have to close that, the recipe and everything, and then address the market. And because Ampen has captive demand, and we, so both the brand names, we come together to address the market challenges. So the internal challenges and market challenges both are addressed that way. But there are other methods also to curb the challenges, which are very individual to the companies, how they want to look at it.
Fair enough. Just to conclude the session, ALMM policy flip-flops. Sorry, can we go on for another 2-3 minutes? All right. ALMM policy flip-flops have been difficult for all stakeholders, including manufacturers, developers, everyone. And we've also seen that happen with the import duty structure in the past. Sujoy, do you have a message to the policymakers, just as a concluding statement to the...
Well, we've given it in writing that you got to impose ALMM on cells from yesterday. Impose meaning notify it, so that people who are bidding into PPAs today, which will see the light of the day 3 years down the line, will at least factor in domestic cell into the equation, right? And unless you do that, there won't be a market for wafers, right? You asked the question about how a 1 gigawatt guy with module is going to compete. He cannot. They're going to lose money and eventually get consolidated. That's the way this industry runs, right? By the way, that's the way the industry runs in China also. The smaller capacity modules actually produce and create inventories, which then hurt the bigger, larger integrated players, which is what's currently playing out in China, and that's the way it plays out everywhere. So our message to the policymakers is very clear. Walk your talk, implement what you committed in 2019, and go forward from there. Otherwise, all of us who are beneficiaries of PLI, sitting on this table, will not be able to progress beyond modules.
Any concluding statements, Anshul, Prashant?
So I personally believe that this is a great time to be in this market. I think we have got the policy initiative which has created the demand. So we have got a platform now as an industry. I think every one of us agreed that the future lies with those who will get efficient. So I think we are at the cusp of that second step, which is efficiency, which will come through either R&D, as Ivan said, or with supply chain, and actually my bad, not or, and with creating supply chain integration, which is ancillaries, and maybe integration upstreams and downstreams, like First Solar example we saw, or what we trying to do. So this is where we will be, and I am pretty hopeful policy or no policy support, we will be one of the good, exporting industry to the globe, because there are a lot of places where labor costs are not competitive, where innovation is not competitive, which India can produce. And I think that's the hope for the industry.
Just one from my side, that as Mr. Sujoy also said, that first we have to make in India and serve India. So the base of basically barring exports, so we should not, like, or if you want to focus, you focus. But what I mean to say is that there is going to be enough demand in India, and manufacturers will see enough modules sold within the domestic territory of India. So the question of export is too secondary actually at this juncture.
From a policy point of view, I think firstly, the government is doing a great job actually. If you compare it to what we see in US, is the kind of policy flip-flop, retrospective taxes and all. There's so much of flip-flop happening. I think the Indian policymakers are doing a much better job than what others have been doing. What we want is firstly, stability in the policies are very important, because manufacturing is a long-term job. From conception to actually implementation is at least a 3-year cycle. Could be more, but at least a 3-year cycle. And if the policies are not stable, obviously that doesn't give confidence to the investors and whoever wants to set up manufacturing. So that is first and foremost. I think from a ecosystem point of view, I think government is already working. This ALCM, so cell manufacturing is already promoted module. I think we are on the right track already, and I think PLI is a good step. But I think PLI has been more from better PLI from polysilicon to module. But I think we need to have a specific PLI for polysilicon and wafer ingot, because that will immediately give investment into that specific, because polysilicon goes also in semiconductor, so it's not only going into solar. So I think large capacities of polysilicon and wafer ingot can come, and that could really be a good start for the industry, and this industry can grow much faster than what it is already doing.
Thank you, Prashant. Just to conclude, we see the sector is poised for strong growth in the coming years. It has already grown leaps and bounds in the last few years. But success in the sector will remain contingent on addressal of key challenges. Key challenges in the form of finding the right manpower, sourcing of raw material, policy stability from the government, balance sheet strength, etc., etc. That's all from our end. Do we have any time for questions? Sir, if you could please introduce yourself and direct your question to.
Name is Dr. Harsh Sethi from Trinano Technologies. My question is actually to the whole panel. So we understand that the country is doing and having leaps and bounds in production capacity in terms of cell and also module manufacturing. But there is a lag in terms of ancillary. So government is supporting the panel manufacturers by PLI, by ALMM and DCR. Do you all feel that for the ancillary also, there should be support from the government in terms of the same schemes extended to ancillary manufacturers, and also support by the manufacturers as well to build that eco structure which is necessary what Ivan said, that for energy independence of country. Thank you.
So ancillary manufacturing is actually for modules is already happening in India. Though it's not enough, but it's already happening. Like for EVA manufacturing, I think at least 20 manufacturers are there in India. Junction box itself, there's one junction box manufacturer who currently has about 50 gigawatt, but they are setting up 150 gigawatt of junction box themselves. Ribbon is also happening in India. So I think for frames and glass we have, but it's not enough, but that's also expanding. And all other manufacturers like us are also setting up their own ancillaries. And then there is duty protection also has recently come for ancillary manufacturers. But yes, there's a challenge there because China has reduced the price further. So it's for an ancillary manufacturer, it's a challenging time. And I think there's already a proposal going on for ALMM type proposal happening for ancillaries also. And as long as I think that's already in the place. And but if we see today the content beyond polysilicon, the silicon part, I think most of it is already happening in India now. And with this, I think it's only going to scale. So like glass today, I think we have about 10 gigawatt, 10, 15 gigawatt, but they're all expanding. So soon we will have enough glass and frame capacity as well. And as we will have cell manufacturing of 20 watt, we'll see paste and frame, screens and gases and chemicals. Everything will happen in India. So it's the ecosystem that will get built once there is size of the market is there.
Just to add to Prashant, one more thing, if you look at PLI scheme, then there is LVA requirement going from first year to fifth year. So for first year, it is for different brackets, the requirement is different, but it moves from 55% to somewhere around 90%. So that is a mandatory part if somebody wants to avail the PLI. So LVA being part of PLI is a quasi ALMM scheme type, you can say.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, panelists. It was a great discussion. That's all from our end. Thank you.